The timestamp on my security system read 2:17 a.m. when I heard Liora's key fumble in the smart lock. 3 attempts. That's what happens when you've had too many margaritas and forgotten that your loving husband upgraded the entry system last month. The one that logs every failed attempt, every successful entry, every goddamn lie. I didn't move from my home office chair. The glow from 3 monitors painted my face blue in the darkness. Spreadsheets and network logs sprawling across the screens like digital tea leaves. 23 years in cybersecurity teaches you that data never lies. People do, constantly. But data is brutally honest. Henry? Leora's voice carried that sing-song quality she got when she was drunk and guilty. You still up, babe? Babe. Christ. When did we start using pet names like shields? I minimized the phone records I'd been studying. Her phone records, pulled from our joint Verizon account with perfectly legal spousal access. Funny how Girls' Weekend in Boston required so many calls to a number registered to one Jasper Dune, licensed contractor, age 44, recently divorced. Even funnier how those calls lasted an average of 47 minutes and happened mostly between 10 p.m. and midnight. Just finishing up some work, I called back, closing the GPS tracking data that showed her phone spending 3 days at the Ocean View Resort in Bar Harbor. The same resort where Jasper Dune's credit card, I'd run a background check naturally, had paid for a suite with ocean views and couples massage packages. Liora appeared in my doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light. Even in the shadows, I could see the tan lines on her shoulders, the way her sundress hung differently on her newly bronzed skin. She'd been pale as winter when she left for her girls' weekend on Thursday. Today was Sunday. Apparently Boston had some remarkable UV exposure for October. You look tired, she said, moving behind my chair to massage my shoulders. Her hand smelled like sunscreen and tequila. You should come to bed. I saved my work and spun the chair around. Up close, her tan was even more obvious. Professional, even. The kind you get from lying by a pool for days, not from walking around downtown Boston in autumn weather. How was your weekend? I asked, studying her face. You look refreshed. Her smile was brilliant and empty. Oh, you know how it is with the girls. Sarah wanted to try that new spa place, and we ended up spending way too much time in the sun. I'm probably going to peel tomorrow. Sarah, her college roommate who lived in Seattle and hadn't visited the East Coast in 3 years? I'd checked. That's great, I said. I'm glad you had fun. Did you get those photos you mentioned? The ones for your portfolio? Liora was a real estate stager, which meant she made empty houses look like homes so people would pay too much for them. It was a job that required an eye for deception, for making things appear better than they actually were. She'd gotten very good at it. Oh, tons of photos, she said, pulling out her phone. Want to see? She scrolled through images of herself and 3 other women I didn't recognize, all of them laughing and holding drinks against scenic backdrops. Beach shots, restaurant terraces, sunset views from what looked like a hotel balcony. Professional quality photos, the kind people take when they're trying to document something special. What she didn't show me were the photos I'd already seen on her cloud backup, the ones with Jasper Dune's arm around her waist, his hand resting possessively on her hip as they posed in front of the same scenic backdrops, the ones where her wedding ring was conspicuously absent. Beautiful, I said. You all look like you had an amazing time. We did. She leaned down and kissed my forehead. I missed you, though. The lie came so easily I almost admired it. Almost. I missed you, too, I said, and meant it. I missed the woman I'd married 18 years ago, the one who used to tell me about her day without editing out the inconvenient parts. I missed trusting the person I shared a bed with. Come on, she said, taking my hand. Let's go upstairs. I followed her, watching as she moved through our house, our smart home, with its connected devices and automatic logging systems, every door opening recorded, every light switch logged, every temperature adjustment tracked. I'd installed it all for convenience and security, never thinking I'd need it to monitor my own wife. In our bedroom, she disappeared into the bathroom while I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the framed photo on her nightstand. Our wedding day, both of us young and stupid and convinced we'd figured out something that had stumped humanity for millennia. My phone buzzed, a text from Carmen, my sister. How was the weekend? Did she buy your story about the conference? I'd told Liora I was attending a cybersecurity conference in Portland while she was away. Instead, I'd spent the weekend installing additional monitoring software on our home network and hiring a private investigator named Dina Reeves, a former Portland PD detective who specialized in matrimonial investigations. I texted back, she's back, tan as a lobster and twice as red-handed. Carmen's response came immediately. Want me to come over tomorrow? I can accidentally spill wine on her new sundress. Despite everything, I smiled. Carmen had never liked Liora, claimed she could smell the selfishness on her from day one. I'd dismissed it as sibling jealousy. Turns out Carmen had a better nose than I'd given her credit for. Not yet, I replied. Still gathering evidence. Liora emerged from the bathroom in a silk nightgown I didn't recognize, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful and guilty, and completely unaware that her husband had just finished documenting her betrayal with the same methodical precision he used to audit corporate networks for security vulnerabilities. "You're being quiet," she said, sliding into bed beside me. "Just thinking about work stuff," I said. "You know how it is." She curled against me, her skin still warm from her shower. "Well, stop thinking about work. I'm home now." Home. As if the word meant the same thing to both of us anymore. I lay awake long after her breathing evened out, staring at the ceiling and planning my next moves. In cybersecurity, we have a saying: the best defense is a good audit trail. Document everything, trust nothing, and always assume someone is trying to compromise your system. I'd been compromised, all right. But the audit was just beginning. Monday morning, I sat in Dina Reeves's office above a Thai restaurant on Commercial Street, breathing in the competing aromas of pad Thai and cigarettes. Dina was exactly what Central Casting would order for a private investigator. Mid-50s, gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, lines around her eyes that suggested she'd seen enough human stupidity to fill several lifetimes. "So," she said, lighting her third cigarette since I'd arrived 20 minutes ago, "your wife spent the weekend playing hide the contractor's hammer, and you want documentation for divorce proceedings." That's a colorful way to put it, but yes. She slid a manila folder across her desk. "Jasper Dune, age 44, owns Dune Construction LLC. Divorced last year from wife number 2, pays alimony to wife number 1, currently dating your missus and at least 2 other women that I could identify from his social media." I opened the folder. The first photo showed Jasper and Liora entering the Ocean View Resort together on Thursday afternoon, her hand in his back pocket, his arm around her shoulders. They looked like teenagers sneaking away from their parents. "He's got a type," Dina continued, ash falling onto her desk. "Married women with money and low self-esteem. Your wife's the 3rd one this year." The second photo showed them on the resort's private beach, Liora in a bikini I'd never seen, Jasper's hands applying sunscreen to her back with obvious enthusiasm. "How did you get these so fast?" "Resort employee owed me a favor. Amazing what people will do for $500 and the promise that their own indiscretions stay private." She leaned back in her chair. "Your wife paid for the room, by the way. Joint credit card ending in 4729. My Amex. The one I'd given her for business expenses and emergencies. Apparently screwing a contractor qualified as both. What else do you have?" She flipped through several more photos, dinner at an expensive restaurant, drinks at a rooftop bar, the 2 of them in what was clearly a hotel room, Leora's wedding ring sitting on the nightstand like a discarded candy wrapper. "The question is," Dina said, "what do you want to do about it?" I studied the photos, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. "I want to destroy them both. Legally speaking, of course." "Of course." She smiled, and it wasn't a nice expression. "Then you've come to the right place. I specialize in legal destruction. It's cleaner than the illegal kind and tends to last longer." I spent an hour going through Dina's findings. Jasper Dune wasn't just a cheating contractor, he was a sloppy one. His business had 3 outstanding liens, 2 complaints with the Better Business Bureau, and a history of using substandard materials to boost his profit margins. More importantly, his company held several contracts with firms that used my cybersecurity company for their IT audits. "He's vulnerable," I told Dina. "Nachi, his business depends on maintaining relationships with companies that trust my professional recommendations." "And your wife?" I thought about Liora's staging business, built entirely on referrals and reputation in a city where everyone knew everyone else's business. "She's even more vulnerable. Her entire client base comes from word-of-mouth recommendations. One whisper campaign could destroy her." "You sound like you're planning something elaborate." "I'm planning something thorough," I corrected. "There's a difference." When I got home that afternoon, Liora was in the kitchen, arranging flowers in a vase I didn't recognize. She looked domestic and innocent, like she'd spent the weekend baking cookies instead of getting horizontal with a contractor who probably thought foreplay was asking if she wanted to see his power tools. "How was work?" she asked, not looking up from her arrangement. "Productive. I'm starting a new audit this week. Might require some late nights." "That's fine. I've got several staging projects coming up anyway. Might be traveling more than usual." "I'll bet," I thought, but said, That's great. Business must be good. She finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or calculation. Henry, she said, are we okay? You seem distant lately. It was a masterful performance. The concerned wife, worried about her marriage, completely unaware that her husband had spent his lunch hour reviewing photographic evidence of her infidelity. Just work stress, I said. You know how it gets during busy season? She nodded, accepting the lie because it was convenient. Well, try to relax tonight. I made dinner reservations at that new place downtown, the one with the rooftop terrace. The same rooftop terrace where she'd been photographed with Jasper 3 days ago, according to the metadata on the photos Dina had shown me. Sounds perfect, I said. That evening, as we sat at a candlelit table overlooking the harbor, Liora was animated and charming, telling stories about her weekend that were carefully edited versions of the truth. She'd learned to lie the way she'd learned to stage houses, by removing the ugly parts and highlighting the features that would sell. Sarah sends her love, she said, cutting into her salmon. She said we should plan a couple's trip sometime. You'd like her husband. Sarah, the college roommate who lived in Seattle and hadn't spoken to Liora in 2 years, according to the social media deep dive I'd conducted. That sounds nice, I said. Maybe next spring. You're being awfully agreeable tonight. I'm in a good mood. Any particular reason? I smiled at my wife, this beautiful, lying stranger who shared my bed and my bank account and apparently my contractor. I'm just looking forward to what comes next. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I love you, Henry. I love you too, I said, and meant it. I loved the woman she used to be before she decided that marriage was just another house to stage, with all the inconvenient truths hidden away where no one would see them. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Dinner with the cheater going well? I glanced at Liora, who was studying the dessert menu with the same intensity she brought to choosing paint colors for client properties. Perfect, I texted back. She has no idea what's coming. Tuesday morning, while Liora was at her yoga class, or what she claimed was yoga class, I implemented phase 1 of what I'd started thinking of as Operation Audit Trail. I began by changing the access codes on our smart home system. Not all of them, just enough to create inconvenience. The garage door opener, the security system, the master bedroom thermostat, small things that would frustrate her without triggering suspicion. Next, I called our bank and requested temporary holds on our joint credit cards, citing suspicious activity. Technically true, spending $3,000 on a romantic weekend with someone else's husband definitely qualified as suspicious in my book. Then I drove to Marlon Hendrick's office. Marlon was my boss at Secure Systems, Inc., a gruff ex-Marine who'd built our cybersecurity firm from nothing into the most trusted IT auditing company in northern Maine. More importantly, he was the kind of man who took personal betrayal very seriously. Henry, he said, looking up from his computer as I knocked on his doorframe, what's got you looking like someone stole your lunch money? I need to talk to you about the Dune construction account. Marlon leaned back in his chair. What about it? They're up for contract renewal next month. Decent client, pays on time, no major security issues. There might be a conflict of interest. I explained the situation in clinical terms, the way I'd present any security vulnerability to a client. Personal relationship compromised, potential for blackmail or coercion, recommended immediate termination of business relationship to prevent further exposure. Marlon listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each detail. Snake, he said when I finished. Your wife's screwing our client, and he thinks that makes him bulletproof? Something like that. Well, he's about to learn different. Marlon pulled up the Dune construction file on his computer. Contract expires October 31st. I'm thinking we don't renew. That would eliminate about 40% of his revenue stream, I said, as if I hadn't already calculated that exact figure. Shame, Marlon said, not sounding sorry at all. Maybe he should have thought about that before he decided to shit where he eats. By Wednesday, the pressure was starting to show. Liora came home from her client meeting, frustrated and distracted, muttering about credit card problems and security system glitches. The garage door wouldn't open this morning, she said, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. I had to use the front door like some kind of peasant. That's weird, I said, not looking up from my laptop. Maybe there's a software update. I'll check it later. And my Amex got declined at lunch. So embarrassing. Probably just a fraud alert. You know how paranoid banks are these days. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide whether my helpfulness was genuine or calculated. You've been different lately, she said. Different how? I don't know. More attentive. Like you're paying attention to things you usually ignore. Smart woman. Too bad she was using her intelligence to cover her tracks instead of saving her marriage. Maybe I'm just trying to be a better husband, I said. Or maybe you're checking up on me. I closed my laptop and looked at her directly. Liora, if I were checking up on you, what would I find? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. She could have come clean right then, could have chosen honesty over deception, could have given us a chance to work through whatever had gone wrong in our marriage. Instead, she laughed. You'd find a very boring woman who spends too much money on coffee and watches too much HGTV, she said. Sorry to disappoint you. No disappointment, I said. Just curious. That evening, Carmen came over for dinner, ostensibly to catch up, but actually to help me gauge Liora's state of mind. My sister had always been good at reading people, a skill that served her well in her job as a high school guidance counselor. You look fantastic, Carmen told Liora as we sat down to eat. That tan really suits you. Thanks. Girls' weekend in Boston. We got lucky with the weather. Boston's beautiful this time of year, Carmen agreed. Where did you stay? Oh, just a little boutique place Sarah found. Very charming. I love boutique hotels. What was it called? I might want to try it next time I'm up there. I watched Liora's face as she scrambled for an answer. The Harbor something. I can't remember exactly. Sarah made all the arrangements. Sarah's always been good at planning trips, Carmen said smoothly. How is she? Still living in Seattle? Portland now, Liora said quickly, then caught herself. I mean, she moved to Portland recently, from Seattle. Portland, Maine, or Portland, Oregon? Oregon, definitely Oregon. Carmen nodded and changed the subject, but I caught her eye across the table. She'd heard the lie, seen the panic, filed it away for later discussion. After Liora went to bed, Carmen and I sat on the back porch with beers, watching the harbor lights twinkle in the distance. She's a terrible liar, Carmen said. She's out of practice. Usually I don't ask questions. And now you are. Now I am. Carmen took a long pull from her beer. So what's the plan? Confront her? Divorce papers? Public humiliation? All of the above, in the right order. Just remember, Henry, revenge is a dish best served with a side of legal documentation. Don't worry, I said. I've got plenty of documentation. Thursday morning, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Dina's gravelly voice cut straight to the point. Your boy Jasper is getting sloppy. He's been calling your wife from his office phone, probably thinks it's more secure than his cell. Want to guess who provides IT security for his building? We do? Bingo. I've got recordings of 6 calls from the past week. Your wife's not the only married woman he's juggling, and he's not being discreet about it. Send me everything. Already in your email. Password is karma. I opened the files at my desk, listening to Jasper's voice as he sweet-talked my wife and at least 2 other women, making promises he had no intention of keeping, arranging meetings that would destroy marriages and families for his own amusement. But it was the last recording that made me freeze. Jasper talking to someone, not Liora, about that cybersecurity guy, and how easy it would be to neutralize the husband if things got complicated. I called Dina back immediately. Yeah, I heard that one too, she said. Your wife's boyfriend isn't just a cheater. He's a sociopath. He's done this before, and he's got a plan for dealing with inconvenient husbands. What kind of plan? The kind that involves planted evidence, anonymous tips to your employer, and destroying your reputation before you can destroy his. I stared out my office window at the harbor, watching fishing boats head out for their daily catch. Jasper Dune thought he was a predator, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd picked the wrong prey. Dina, I said, how do you feel about moving to Phase 2? Thought you'd never ask. Friday evening, I sat in the Patchcord, a dive bar on the waterfront that served as the unofficial headquarters for Portland's construction and maritime workers. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business and gossip flowed more freely than the cheap beer. I wasn't there by accident. According to Dina's research, Jasper Dune held court at the Patchcord most Friday nights, buying rounds for his crew and anyone else who'd listened to his stories about conquest, professional and personal. I'd arrived early, claiming a corner booth with a clear view of the bar and the entrance. The bartender, a weathered woman named Rita, who looked like she could arm wrestle a longshoreman and win, had already pegged me as someone who didn't belong. You're not a regular, she said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden bar. Just moved here, I lied. Heard this was a good place to meet people in the construction business. Depends what kind of meeting you're looking for. At exactly 7:30, Jasper walked in like he owned the place. He was everything Liora's photos had suggested. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of rugged good looks that came from working with his hands and spending time outdoors. the kind of man who probably thought he was God's gift to unsatisfied wives. He was followed by 3 members of his crew, including a short, stocky man I recognized from Dina's files as Omar Vega, Jasper's foreman and right-hand man. "Rita," Jasper called out, spreading his arms wide. "Set up the usual for my boys. We're celebrating." "What are we celebrating?" Rita asked, already pulling beers from the cooler. "New contract with the city. Biggest job we've landed in 2 years." I almost choked on my beer. The city contract he was celebrating wouldn't exist by Monday morning. Marlon had already made the calls to ruin it. But Jasper didn't know that yet. I listened as he regaled his audience with stories of his business acumen, his way with clients, his ability to charm his way into any situation. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. "The secret," he was saying, gesturing with his beer bottle, "is knowing what people want and giving it to them. Take this job. The city council was all worried about cost overruns and schedule delays. I told them exactly what they wanted to hear." "What about permits?" Omar asked. "Johnson said the environmental impact study might be a problem." Jasper waved dismissively. "Already handled. I know a guy who knows a guy. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you're sleeping with." The table erupted in laughter, and I felt my jaw clench. He was talking about more than just business connections. "Speaking of sleeping with," one of the crew members said, "how's that real estate lady working out? The married one?" "Liora?" Jasper's smile was predatory. "She's educational. Amazing what some women will do when they think they're rebelling against their boring husbands." My hand tightened around my beer bottle. "You ever feel bad about it?" Omar asked. "Breaking up marriages and all?" "Please," Jasper scoffed. "If their marriages were solid, I wouldn't be able to break them. I'm providing a service, showing these women what they're missing, what they deserve. It's not my fault their husbands can't satisfy them." The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I finished my beer, left a 20 on the table, and walked out into the cool October air. My phone was buzzing with text messages from Liora, asking where I was, when I'd be home, whether I wanted her to wait up. I ignored them all and called Dina. "How did it go?" she asked. "He's everything you said he was and worse. How's the other project coming?" "Your wife's client list? Almost finished. Turns out she's got some very interesting connections. The mayor's wife, 3 city council members' spouses, the police chief's daughter. All of them have used her staging services in the past 2 years." "Perfect. What about Jasper's business relationships?" "That's where it gets interesting. He's been cutting corners on materials, using unlicensed subcontractors, and falsifying safety inspections. I've got documentation going back 3 years. Enough to destroy him? Enough to put him in prison if the right people see it. Saturday morning, I woke up to find Liora already gone. A note on the kitchen counter explained that she'd been called away for an emergency staging consultation and wouldn't be back until Sunday evening. I called the number she'd left for emergencies. It went straight to voicemail, a generic message that could have belonged to anyone. While my wife was off playing house with her contractor, I spent the weekend implementing the next phase of my plan. I started with social media, creating anonymous accounts, and joining local community groups, real estate forums, and construction industry pages. Then I began planting seeds. A comment here about contractors who overcharge for substandard work. A question there about real estate stagers who might have conflicts of interest with their clients. Nothing direct, nothing actionable, just enough to get people thinking and talking. By Sunday afternoon, I had a network of digital breadcrumbs that would lead anyone who cared to look directly to Jasper Dune and his questionable business practices. Carmen came over for dinner, bringing Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. "You look like hell," she said, setting the bags on my kitchen counter. "Thanks. You always know exactly what to say to cheer me up." "I'm serious, Henry. When's the last time you slept? Or ate something that didn't come from a vending machine?" I thought about it and realized I couldn't remember. The past week had been a blur of planning, surveillance, and careful manipulation. "I'm fine," I said. "You're not fine. You're obsessed. There's a difference." We ate in relative silence, the weight of unspoken concerns hanging between us like fog. "Can I ask you something?" Carmen said finally. "Shoot." "Are you doing this to save your marriage or to destroy it?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on the tactical aspects of revenge that I hadn't stopped to consider the strategic implications. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe both. Because if you're trying to save it, there are easier ways. Marriage counseling, honest conversation, working through whatever went wrong. And if I'm trying to destroy it? Then you're doing a hell of a job. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Carmen's question. What did I want? Justice? Revenge? Closure? Or was I just trying to prove that I was smarter than the people who'd betrayed me? My phone buzzed with a text from Liora. Missing you. Can't wait to get home tomorrow. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. Outside, the wind was picking up, rattling the windows and sending faded leaves skittering across the yard. Storm coming, according to the weather forecast. Perfect timing. Monday morning arrived with the kind of driving rain that made everyone in Maine remember why they complained about the weather 9 months out of the year. I sat in my office, watching water streak down the windows while I waited for the first domino to fall. It didn't take long. At 9:15 a.m., my phone rang. Marlon's voice was grim, but satisfied. It's done, he said. Dune Construction's contract with the city has been terminated, effective immediately. Turns out they failed to disclose several safety violations from previous jobs. How did the city find out about those violations? Anonymous tip came in over the weekend. Very detailed, very well documented. Whoever sent it really did their homework. Imagine that. Henry, Marlon said, his voice carrying a warning. I hope you know what you're doing. I'm conducting a thorough audit, I replied, just like you taught me. At 10:30, Dina called with an update. Your boy Jasper just got some very bad news, she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. City contract gone, 3 private clients have requested meetings to discuss concerns about work quality, and the Better Business Bureau is launching a formal investigation. What about his crew? Omar Vega called in sick this morning. Word is he's interviewing with other contractors, Rats sinking ship, you know the drill, and Liora. Radio silence. Her phone's been off since yesterday afternoon. That was interesting. Leora's phone was never off. Her business depended on being available to clients at all hours. Either her battery had stopped or she was somewhere she didn't want to be tracked. I spent the morning working on legitimate cybersecurity audits, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy while my personal life imploded in carefully orchestrated stages. But concentration was impossible. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected news of the next falling domino. At lunch, I drove to the patch cord. The lunch crowd was smaller than the evening regulars, mostly dock workers and a few early drinkers who'd given up pretending they had somewhere else to be. Rita was behind the bar, polishing glasses with the mechanical precision of someone who'd been doing the same job for 20 years. Back again, she said when she saw me. Thought you were new in town. I am, just like the atmosphere. She snorted. Atmosphere's about all we got. That and gossip. You hear about Jasper Dune? I tried to look interested, but not too interested. The contractor, what about him? Lost the big city contract. Word is he's been cutting corners, using cheap materials, bribing inspectors. City's talking about investigating all his previous jobs. That's rough. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, Rita said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Always thought he was hot shit, buying rounds and bragging about his conquests. Guess karma finally caught up with him. Conquests? Rita leaned closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Women. Married women, mostly. He'd come in here bragging about how easy it was to seduce bored housewives. Made my skin crawl. Jesus. Yeah, well, Jesus might forgive him, but their husbands probably won't. I finished my beer and left, feeling a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. Phase 1 was complete. Jasper's professional reputation was in ruins, his business was collapsing, and his crew was abandoning him. Now it was time to move on to Phase 2. That evening, Liora finally came home. She looked tired and stressed, her usual polished appearance replaced by rumpled clothes and smeared makeup. She'd been crying, her eyes were red and puffy, and she kept checking her phone every few minutes. How was your weekend? I asked, not looking up from my laptop. Fine, she said too quickly. Just work stuff. You know how demanding clients can be. I do indeed. She disappeared upstairs to shower, and I used the opportunity to check the GPS tracker I'd installed on her car. According to the data, she'd spent the weekend at a cheap motel outside Bangor, not exactly the kind of place that required emergency staging consultations. When she came back downstairs, she seemed more composed, like she'd used the shower to wash away whatever had happened over the weekend. Henry, she said, sitting down across from me, we need to talk. Here it comes, I thought. The confession, the tears, the plea for forgiveness. About what? About us, about our marriage. I feel like we've been drifting apart lately. Not a confession, a deflection. She was going to make this about our relationship problems, about how we'd grown distant, about how these things just happen in long marriages. I haven't noticed us drifting, I said carefully. You've been working late more often, spending more time on your computer, asking more questions about my schedule. It feels like you don't trust me. The audacity was breathtaking. She was cheating on me with a contractor who bragged about his conquests to strangers in bars, and she was making it my fault for noticing. Should I trust you? I asked. The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. She could still come clean, could still choose honesty over deception, could still give us a chance to work through this like adults. Instead, she got angry. I can't believe you're asking me that, she said, her voice rising. After 18 years of marriage, after everything we've built together, you're questioning whether you can trust me? I'm questioning whether I should. Based on what? What evidence do you have that I've ever been anything but faithful to you? Evidence. She wanted evidence. I could have shown her the photos, played her the recordings, presented her with a complete dossier of her affair with Jasper Dune. I could have ended this conversation with facts and documentation and irrefutable proof of her betrayal. Instead, I smiled. You're right, I said. I don't have any evidence. I'm sorry for doubting you. The relief on her face was almost comical. She thought she'd won, thought she'd successfully gaslit me into backing down, thought she was smarter than the man she'd been lying to for months. I love you, Henry, she said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. I know things have been stressful lately, but we can work through this. We always do. We always do, I agreed. That night, as she slept beside me, I finalized the plans for Phase 2. Jasper Dune's professional life was in ruins, but his personal life was still intact. That was about to change. I opened my laptop and began typing, crafting the first of several messages that would be sent from anonymous accounts to very specific recipients. The wives of Jasper's other conquests, the husbands who had no idea they were being cuckolded, the families who thought they could trust the charming contractor with the easy smile and the wandering hands. By morning, Jasper Dune would discover that his reputation for discretion was as fictional as his reputation for quality work. And Liora? Liora was about to learn that her husband was much better at playing the long game than she'd ever imagined. Tuesday morning brought the kind of chaos that made me remember why I'd chosen cybersecurity as a career. There was something deeply satisfying about watching a carefully planned operation execute with precision, each element triggering the next in perfect sequence. My phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. Dina's voice was hoarse but triumphant. Jesus Christ, Henry, what did you do? I sent some emails. Why? Jasper Dune's world is imploding. His ex-wife called the police over missed alimony payments, and 3 different husbands showed up at his office demanding answers, and someone spray-painted "Home Wrecker" across his truck in the middle of the night. I sipped my coffee, watching Liora sleep through the open bedroom door. Sounds like he's having a rough morning. It gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. The state licensing board got an anonymous tip about his safety violations, the IRS received documentation about unreported income, and his insurance company is reviewing his coverage after receiving concerning information about his business practices. Thorough, I said. That's one word for it. Where did you get all this information? I'm very good at my job. By 8 a.m., Liora was awake and checking her phone obsessively. She'd received 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, but she wasn't answering any of them. Everything okay? I asked, buttering my toast with deliberate casualness. Fine, she said, but her hands were shaking as she scrolled through her messages. Just work stuff. Must be some pretty urgent work stuff. She looked at me sharply, searching my face for signs that I knew more than I was letting on. It's nothing I can't handle. I'm sure it isn't. At 9:30, I was in my office when Marlon knocked on my door frame. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. About? About the fact that half the construction contractors in Portland are calling us this morning, asking if we know anything about the Jasper Dune situation. What situation? Marlon sat down across from my desk, his expression serious. Henry, I've been in this business for 25 years. I've seen corporate espionage, industrial sabotage, and every kind of dirty trick you can imagine. What happened to Dune Construction overnight wasn't random. Meaning? Meaning someone with serious skills and serious motivation decided to destroy that man's life. Someone who knew exactly where to hit for maximum damage. I met his gaze steadily. And you think I had something to do with it? I think you're the best cybersecurity specialist I've ever worked with, and I think Jasper Dune made the mistake of screwing your wife. Draw your own conclusions. We stared at each other for a long moment. Hypothetically, Marlin said finally, if someone were conducting an unauthorized audit of a cheating contractor's life, I'd want to make sure they covered their tracks completely. Hypothetically? Hypothetically, because if any of this came back to our company, it would destroy everything we've built. Understood. Good. And Henry? Hypothetically speaking, whoever did this is an artist. At lunch, I drove to the patchcord for what I knew would be the final act of this particular drama. The bar was more crowded than usual, filled with construction workers, dock hands, and curious locals who'd heard rumors about the morning's excitement. Rita was behind the bar, holding court like a news anchor. 3 different guys showed up at his office this morning, she was saying to a rapt audience, all of them looking for Jasper, all of them carrying baseball bats. What did he do? Someone asked. What do you think he did? Same thing he always does, screwed around with other men's wives and thought he was too smart to get caught. I ordered a beer and found a seat at the end of the bar, close enough to hear the conversation, but far enough away to avoid drawing attention. Where is he now? Another voice asked. Nobody knows. His truck's parked outside his office with the windows smashed and cheater painted across the windshield, but he's nowhere to be found. Smart man. If I were him, I'd be halfway to Canada by now. Rita laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Smart? If he were smart, he wouldn't have been bragging about his conquests to anyone who'd listen. Half the men in this bar knew what he was doing. We just didn't know which husbands to tell. Someone told them now. Someone sure did. And whoever it was, they did their homework. I heard the police got anonymous tips about 3 different affairs, complete with photos and hotel receipts. I finished my beer and left, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction settling in my bones. Justice wasn't always served by the courts or the police. Sometimes it was served by angry husbands with baseball bats and spray paint. That evening, Liora was waiting for me when I got home. She'd been crying again, her makeup smeared and her hands shaking as she clutched a glass of wine. We need to leave, she said without preamble. Leave? Leave where? Portland, Maine. This whole state. I got a job offer in Phoenix. We could start over, get away from all this small-town bullshit. What small-town bullshit? She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Haven't you heard about Jasper Dune, about what happened to his business? I heard some rumors. Why would that affect us? The question seemed to break something inside her. She started laughing, but it was the kind of laughter that came from hysteria rather than humor. Because I've been sleeping with him for 6 months, she said, the words coming out in a rush. Because I'm in love with him. Because I was going to leave you for him, and now his life is destroyed and mine is about to be. There it was. The confession I'd been waiting for, delivered with all the grace and dignity of a drunk college student. You've been having an affair, I said, as if the concept were entirely foreign to me. Yes. For 6 months. Yes. And you were planning to leave me? Yes. She was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streams. But it's over now. Whatever happened to Jasper, whoever destroyed his business, they're going to come after me next. Why would anyone come after you? Because I was part of it. Because I helped him launder money through my business. Because I gave him inside information about city contracts. Because I'm as guilty as he is. This was news to me. I'd known about the affair, but I hadn't known about the financial crimes. Liora had been more involved in Jasper's business than I'd realized. What kind of inside information? Client lists, renovation schedules, permit applications. Jasper would bid on jobs before they were publicly announced, undercut his competition, win contracts through information I gave him. That's illegal. No shit, it's illegal. She was screaming now, her voice echoing off the walls of our kitchen. But I didn't care because I was in love and I was stupid and I thought we could get away with it. I stared at my wife, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 18 years, and realized I'd never really known her at all. She wasn't just an adulteress. She was a criminal. She hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd betrayed her clients, her profession, and her own moral code. So, what do you want to do? I asked. I want us to leave, tonight, before whoever destroyed Jasper comes after us. Us? They know about me, Henry. They have to know. If they could dig up all that information about Jasper's business, they know about our affair, about the money, about everything. She was right, of course. I did know about everything, but she didn't need to know that. Liora, I said gently, I think you should pack a bag. Hope flickered in her eyes. You mean we're leaving? No, I said. I mean you're leaving, alone. The hope faded instantly, replaced by confusion and growing panic. What are you talking about? I walked to the kitchen drawer where we kept important documents and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were divorce papers prepared weeks ago and waiting for the right moment. I'm talking about the end of our marriage, I said, setting the papers on the counter between us. I'm talking about you reaping what you've sown. She stared at the documents like they might burst into flames. You knew, she whispered. I knew. How long? Long enough? And you did this. You destroyed Jasper. You destroyed us. I smiled, and I knew it wasn't a nice expression. I conducted an audit, Liora. I found vulnerabilities in your security protocols and exploited them. It's what I do for a living. She lunged at me then, her wine glass shattering against the kitchen wall as she tried to claw at my face. But I'd been expecting it, had been planning for this moment for weeks. I caught her wrists easily, holding her at arm's length while she screamed and struggled. You bastard, she shrieked. You bastard. You destroyed everything. No, I said calmly. You destroyed everything. I just documented it. I released her wrists and stepped back, watching as she collapsed against the kitchen counter, sobbing and broken. The papers are already filed, I said. Your lawyer has copies. Your bank accounts are frozen, your credit cards are canceled, and your business license is under review by the state board. She looked up at me with pure hatred in her eyes. I'll fight this. I'll take half of everything you own. With what money? With what lawyer? With what reputation? I shook my head. You're broke, Liora. Professionally, financially, and morally. You have nothing left to fight with. She tried to speak, but no words came. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. There's a cab waiting outside, I said. Your bags are by the front door. I suggest you call your sister in Phoenix. I hear the weather's nice this time of year. She stumbled toward the door, then turned back one last time. I loved him, she said. I know, I replied. That's what made this so easy. I watched from the window as she got into the cab, her shoulders shaking with sobs. As the taillights disappeared down the street, I poured myself a glass of the wine she'd been drinking, a bottle from our honeymoon in Napa Valley, saved for special occasions. This seemed special enough. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. Is it over? It's over, I typed back. How do you feel? I considered the question, taking a sip of wine and looking around the house that was finally completely mine. Audited, I replied. Outside, the storm was passing, and the first stars were beginning to appear through the breaking clouds. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of rebuilding my life, of figuring out who I was without the weight of betrayal and deception dragging me down. But tonight, I was content to sit in my kitchen, drinking wine and watching the harbor lights twinkle in the distance, knowing that justice had been served with the precision and thoroughness that only a properly conducted audit could provide. Jasper Dune was ruined, his business destroyed, his reputation in ashes. Liora was gone, her life in shambles, her dreams of starting over with her contractor boyfriend nothing but bitter memories. And me? I was free. The audit was complete. The system had been purged of its vulnerabilities. All that remained was the satisfaction of a job well done. I raised my glass to the empty house and smiled.